one of the greats, a good friend of mine, and a good friend of Talk is Jericho, talking about Lemmy from Motorhead. And what a great guy. He passed away very quickly. He had some really bad health issues over the last few years. And then basically, from what I heard, and this is, I don't know if this is the true set in stone story, but basically was told he had a terminal disease and only had a few weeks to live, months or whatever it was, and basically died like 10 minutes later, which is incredible when you think about it. And it's also super, it's kind of cool. It's very Lemmy, because he was like, I'm just envisioning him saying, okay, so this disease is going to wreak havoc on my body and slowly eat me away. I'm not going to give it the pleasure. I'm going to take myself out, and willed himself to die. Like, what a way for a warrior to go out. And Lemmy was a warrior, the original rock and roll warrior, pioneer for the last 50 years of being in the music business, and just such a great, cool guy. And he was on Talk is Jericho, like I mentioned, episode 108. If you want to go back and listen to it, you'll see that not only was he charming, smart, funny, great sense of humor, very dry, very sarcastic. And it was a really cool day, thanks to Motorhead manager Todd Singerman for helping me put that together. I went to Lemmy's apartment down in Hollywood, and he showed me all of these like World War II artifacts that he had all hanging on the wall, and he would go into long, detailed discussions and dissertations, giving me information about every single piece. And he had all this ridiculously crazy stuff, like medals from dead soldiers and flags, and Hitler's lighter, Eva Braun's cookware, like her fork and knife. Like, who even has that stuff? And he was telling me all the information about that. It was like a curator of a museum. He was so well informed about all this stuff. And I realized that, like, he was almost like your grandfather when you go to your grandfather's house and he just wants you to stay, so he keeps telling you these stories. And that's kind of what I felt like that day. Like, he was maybe a little bit lonely, and he was afterwards. He's like, it's really cool to have you here. You can come back anytime, because it's great having a conversation with someone who could throw something back in the mix. Because I was giving him some Beatles info I don't think he knew, and some Stones info, and we talked about Fawlty Towers, which is a great English show. If you haven't seen it, starring John Cleese, that he was a big fan of. I've been a big fan since I was like 10 years old. So we kind of went back and forth on that, and we just had a really cool conversation. And I've known Lemmy for years. I met him first at probably 1995 with Robbie Brookside, who is now an NXT trainer, and we met Lemmy at the Osaka Hard Rock Cafe in Japan. And I went over and talked to him, and he was super friendly, super nice. And throughout the years, saw him, when he started working with the WWE, and then, the podcast really opened the door as far as us becoming, closer friends. But, there was the time that we went to the radio station in Phoenix, and Lemmy made me the Jack and Coke with, his hands were all dirty, and stuck his hand in the ice bucket and threw it in the glass. And, I've told that story before, so I apologize if you've heard it. But I was like, hopefully the straight Jack Daniels will kill the germs on Lemmy's filthy hands. But then we did the podcast and then opened the door. And then, this last month has been kind of like Lemmy month, because I hosted the Classic Rock Awards in London, and Lemmy was there. He was handing out an award to Jimmy Page, which was accepted by Jimmy Page's sister. Sorry, not Jimmy Page, Jimi Hendrix. I apologize. Handing an award for Jimi Hendrix. And Hendrix's sister was picking it up, and he had to introduce the award and then introduce a highlight video about Jimi Hendrix. And they told me, if Lemmy forgets, make sure you interrupt him. And of course he forgot. So not interrupt him, make sure you remind him. So of course he forgot, and I reminded him. He's like, oh yeah, I forgot, whatever. And when he came on stage, I gave him a hug, and I said, I'm sorry, Lem, we're all out of Waldorfs. And he started laughing. Total Fawlty Towers episode. So, but he was looking good. I mean, he was looking frail when I went to his house last year, but he was looking, kind of like the same, very slow moving, but talking a lot. And then when I saw him at his 70th birthday party, at the Whiskey, you could really see, like, he had that stare. Like, when you go see somebody in the hospital and they're dying, you could tell that there was something really wrong with them. And he was sitting in a chair the whole time watching the show. And it was funny, like, even they had this big, beautiful tribute video that all the rockers were saying, happy birthday, Lemmy, and happy birthday. And he was just sitting in the chair reading a book, which was funny. I was talking with Lars Ulrich, and we were pointing, like, is he reading a book? And then I decided I wanted to go over and say hi to him, because I could just tell, like, I knew I had to go to that party. Like, I just felt like if you want to see Lemmy again one last time, you got to go to this party. And I'm glad I did, because as soon as I saw him, I'm like, yeah, he's got some issues. I don't know what it is. Like I said, he's had some bad health over the last few years, but you could see something was really different and changed in him. And so I asked, there was a crowd of people around him. I went and asked his girlfriend if I could go say hi. And they, obviously took me over to him. And I just said, happy birthday, and glad to see you, man. And he just kind of looked at me and, nodded, and he brought me closer to him so he could hear what I was saying. And then he gave me a pinky swear handshake, like teenage girls, like, my pinky swear. I'm not really too sure why, but it was pretty cool. So he gave me the pinky swear handshake, and then I came in close to him and I said, whatever you do, do not mention the war. And he kind of looked at me and like, what? And I said, whatever you do, don't mention the war. It's a total John Cleese from Fawlty Towers. And he kind of smiled. And that was the last words I ever said to Lem, and the last time I ever saw him. So you remember that. And talk about that 70th birthday party, how many people were there. It's because Lemmy was super friendly and super great to everybody. If you go on Instagram, you can see all these photos from every band, every musician, because Lemmy was friendly to everybody. He wasn't a dick. He wasn't ever aloof or egotistical, just a guy, just a great guy. And another thing I remembered about seeing all these photos on Instagram is, as I worked with him a lot too at the Golden Gods, when I hosted the Golden Gods Awards at the Nokia Theater in LA, like Lemmy was always there for those. And my friend Josh Bernstein and I, who used to do those shows together, he sent me all these great pictures of, me and Lemmy and Mustaine and Vinnie Paul and Zach Wilde all hanging out at the Rainbow, doing all these skits for the Golden Gods. And there's this other one where I'm not sure exactly why, but Lemmy's behind me and he's got his arms around my neck from behind like a prom date. And so I posted that picture and was like, here's my prom date. And it's just cool. Like, you forget all that stuff. And when someone passes away, you get all these memories that flood back in of every experience that you had with them, And I remember Fozzy played a show. We supported Motorhead at the Wiltern Theater in Los Angeles. And after the show, Lemmy's like, oh, you look like you had a good time running around, jumping up and down everywhere. And I was like, you watched our set? And he's like, of course I did. And I was like, why would Lemmy watch our set? But he did. And, he made a point to come over and tell us that he watched it. He didn't say if he liked it or not. He just said that he watched it and saw us jumping around all over the place. But, lots of good smiles and good feelings. And, it's a sad day because not only is Lemmy gone, Motorhead is gone too. And Motorhead is just, if there was no Motorhead, there'd be no Metallica, no Avenged Sevenfold, and no Anthrax, no Megadeth. Like, Motorhead was the cornerstone for all those heavy types of music, and even for anybody in rock and roll. Ed Sheeran owes something to Motorhead, and One Direction owes something to Lemmy, and they've been around for so long. Like, Motorhead, I always say, is like pizza or sex. Even when it's bad, it's good. Like, there's no such thing as bad Motorhead. It's genetically impossible, and it's the same with Lemmy. Like I said, just a consummate great guy. And I even said on Instagram, thanks for everything, man. You were the real deal on stage and off, and a true gentleman. And that's the truth, a true gentleman. Lemmy only got mad at me one time. I went to the Rainbow. I'd actually just watched the documentary called Lemmy, which, if you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's really, really cool. And it showed Lemmy just playing one of those video poker games at the Rainbow. He used to hang out in the back of the Rainbow and play this game over and over and over and over again. And I was like, I wonder if I go to the Rainbow now, if Lemmy will be there. So I was flying to LA. I watched the Lemmy documentary, and then I went to the Rainbow, and lo and behold, sitting in the back of the room, there he was. So I went over and said hi to him. Hey Lemmy, it's Jericho. And he's like, hey. And he got mad at me because I interrupted his game. He was like, I'm playing this game right now. And I was like, oh, I just want to say hi. Well, hi then. He must have been losing. He was in a bad mood because I interrupted his video poker game. They should make that like a monument at the Rainbow, like Lemmy's Corner or something like that, because he was always there and that was his thing. So great guy. And once again, he beat death on his own terms. He went out his own way, the same way that he always lived his life. And I appreciate that, and I respect him for being a good guy and a friend to me. And once again, a great conversation with Lemmy on Talk is Jericho, episode 108. If you want to go back and listen to that, it's a good indication of the type of guy that Lemmy was. And I'm going to miss him, as will the entire rock community. So Lemmy, we love you, man. And we're going to miss you.